Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life remake takes us back to one of the most memorable farming sims in the early 2000s. This heartwarming farming and dating sim will have you exploring the countryside, growing crops, and hopefully falling in love with one of Forgotten Valley's endearing bachelors and bachelorettes. Story of Seasons is a true classic, but with the sheer volume of farming games we're seeing, is nostalgia all it has going for it? I have been playing Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life, the remake. So this is a remake of the classic Harvest Moon Story of Seasons, which also got, I think, a remaster a couple of times for PlayStation 2 and also for PlayStation 3 and 4. They had its own port. But this is a proper remake, so a lot of things have changed in the game. How familiar are you with Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons?
We talk about this every episode. I am so not a Harvest Moon Story of Seasons guy. I'm a Stardew Valley bastard.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I love Stardew Valley with my heart. And it's just because I never grew up with Harvest Moon. So that's maybe because I'm jealous of it. So I don't know anything about it except for it's like a more comprehensive. I don't know if that's fair to say, but like it's different from Stardew at the end of the day. But Stardew obviously takes so much from Harvest Moon. How does this is this a pure one-for-one remake? Like, what is the relationship between a newer iteration of this game and the ones that I guess most of the people that are probably listening grew up on?
Well, there's a really annoying bit of history to it, but I'll try and summarize it as well as I can as to why this is a remake of Harvest Moon, but it's not called Harvest Moon. So I'm sure you've heard some of the legal, whatever, boring details. But basically, Harvest Moon, the original game, was produced by Marvelous, and the localization rights to North America went to a company called Natsume. So Natsume was able to distribute outside of Japan. And then later on, Marvelous had a subsidiary called Xseed, and then Xseed was supposed to look after the North American distribution and so on. But Natsume still had the holding rights for the name Harvest Moon. So in Japan, it's called something else. In Japan, it's called Bokujo Monogatari. So there's this issue where Marvelous is still making the game, but they don't have the rights to the name Harvest Moon, which everyone is aware of is iconic. It's the farming game. And so they started making the games under the name Story of Seasons moving forward. But the issue is Natsume was still making Harvest Moon games, even though they're making games called Harvest Moon, but they are not Harvest Moon games. And they look exactly the same. As in the characters, there's like a boy version, a girl version, they're wearing blue overalls. It's almost as if like someone out there made a game called Last Fantasy, and the main character's name was Clove, and they look exactly the same, but everything else about it is like the mechanics are bad, the farming game is bad, like it's awful. But anyway, so now Story of Seasons is the way you want to recognize. If you're a fan of Harvest Moon, or if you want to play Harvest Moon-like games that are modern, look out for the name Story of Seasons, because that's the actual developers who made the original and who are iterating on the same style of it. So it's a TLDR of how it is.
And does it hold up? Like, despite the legal, hullabaloo, the back and forth, and like the fact that this property is such in a weird state, like with your experience, does it hold up? It is the farming sim to end all farming sims, right? The farming sim that started it all, if you will, to many. Like, does it hold up?
I think in the vein of remakes, it definitely does. So I also played the remake of Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town, which is like the OG first story. I played that last year, I think. And in the same vein, so they've made a lot of really modern updates, and there's a lot more customization. So one I really want to call it is, of course, your main character is gender fluid. So you can choose whatever pronouns you want: he, her, he, him, she, her, they, them. The only thing is you're locked in once you choose one. That's kind of it. Like you can't play around with it. But this is such a big step over the original title, where it's not even like you can choose a boy or a girl. Some of the original games, you're just a boy. If you want the girl version, you got to buy the girl version, which came out much later. And then this one, you can customize how you look throughout the game. So today you want ponytail, you get a ponytail. Tomorrow you want to have a red short hair, just like a male presenting dude. You can do that as well. So I think that's really important. And that also extends to who you can romance in the game. So a big part of Harvest Moon Story of Seasons is getting to know the characters in the game and eventually marrying someone. In the past, again, if you're playing as a male presenting character, you only marry female characters and vice versa. But in this one, you can marry anyone. So whatever they look like, whoever tickles your fancy, it's great. How inclusive I think they've made the game. Obviously, more steps to go with greater skin color customization and so on like that. But great first steps in that sense.
I love it because I think they're learning a lot from other games as well, where I feel like farming sims and these kind of more life sims are a safe space for more marginalized communities that are out there. And I think there's just a growing trend in that, in this specific genre, to be inclusive. So it's so beautiful to hear that, like, again, this Temple franchise, this Legacy franchise is embracing some of that newness.
There's a lot of great like updates to like quality of life as well. In the original farming games, so you're farming, you pick up your harvested cabbage and you put it in your bag, and you pick up your tomato, you put in your bag. Like there's this very fluid sort of you get the muscle memory of how to do that action. But so many times I've just dropped my vegetable on the floor and it's just gone. In the game, and not only that, in the game it treats it as if you're littering, and then your overall standing in the city, in the town, goes down because you just like litter. And I'm like, oh my god, that was like money for this week. I get so upset. In this game, they've gotten rid of that, so there's like very little chance of make just like being not very dexterous and just dropping stuff everywhere. That's fine. They also have shortened the season cycle. So normally it's like each season is 20 or 30 days, like summer, spring, winter. Now it's only 10 days. I don't know if it's because it's also just like gamers don't have the willingness to grind. But now summer is 10 days, spring is 10 days. And then the plants are not just like summer only, they're like summer and spring. So your crops will last longer and they take less time to grow. And there's like, you can experience more things in the game. So it's not like such a long grind to get to the next part of your life, which is good, I guess, for people who are trying to get into it and they don't want to spend like 3 months before they're able to afford a cow because like it took them so long to harvest turnips and their turnips died and things like that. So it's a bit of an easier grind in that sense. So I guess it's more accessible for new players to the farming grind.
I'm just so curious how, just personal curiosity, like how it stacks against other more modern titles that aren't Story of Seasons, right? Harvest Moon.
I think for me, I like my games very kind of simple. And I guess because I've had the experience of playing this as a kid, like this is what I know and what I like. I get very overwhelmed easily if there are too many things that I can do. I know there's a lot of farming sims out there where you can do like aqua farming, or you spend more time in the water, which is very cool for people who are more inclined that way. Or you have like 10 different types of barn animals. Like I'm pretty satisfied with just having like my cow, my sheep, my chickens, my dog. It's just a very simple. I think what is important for me in these games is like, firstly, with the mechanic of farming, it has to be such a delicate balance of it has to be addicting, so you don't mind doing it, but it's not tiring. You don't want it to actually feel like work. And I think that's why the little upgrades they've made this time make it easier, and it's more forgiving to players who might make mistakes. And then also with the farming, they have made it a little bit more complex. So now you get, your animals are gendered. So before you just have cows and you feed them miracle potions and then they can get pregnant and have like baby cows. But now you can have like cows and bulls. And then, if they spend time together, they can just get naturally pregnant, which is cool, I think, and more reflective of real life, I suppose. But it just means like you've got a whole bunch of dude animals who actually don't contribute to your farm other than I literally have this problem right now. I have 3 female chickens and 1 cock, and he's just not doing anything aside from just being himself.
Get it together, man. You know what I mean? Like, people rely on you. God damn it.
The characters, I think characters are also really important. So the way that they look and how much you relate to them and who you actually like. Because when I first played A Wonderful Life, way back on the original one, I found all the guys like highly unattractive, and I just couldn't bring myself to spend time with them. And I thought, I'm just gonna not marry. I'm gonna focus on my career. But the game actually punishes you in that sense. I think you do need to get married if you want to progress to the next level, like within a year. And then this time they've given some of the characters like a facelift. So there's a character named Gustafa. In the original game, he looks like a bridge troll. In the new game, he just looks like a tortured artist, slightly rugged. I'm like, okay, I'll take that. Marlin used to look like an Elvis Presley impersonator. now he just looks like a brooding anime dude, and his name is Matthew, not Marlon. Yeah. Okay. Just little things like that made the men in this series more appealing to me. But the girls are all still very cute, very very interesting. They all got different characters as well. The last thing I will add that this series has versus like the other Harvest Moon Story Seasons games is that when you have a child, you can actually grow. Like your child will grow up with you, and depending on what you expose your child to, like who your friends are, it will kind of determine their career. So if you're really good friends with the farmer next door, and you're hanging out with them a lot, and the child spends a lot of time with them, then there's a high likelihood that your child will become a farmer as well. Or if you hang out with the mad scientist in town, your child might become more sciencey and maybe like have a career in the city, things like that. And if you follow like guides, it actually tells you like from this point on, like it's cemented. They've decided on their career, and you can't change it like that. So there's more of a sense of a passage of time in this game, whereas I think in other previous Harvest Moon games you just farm indefinitely. But in this game, like characters grow up, characters grow old, and you can die as well, which is quite. I think it's quite.
What does that mean? I've seen this online, but what does that mean?
It means that like you have your whole like death sequence, and and the friends that you like. If you've made good friends in the town, they come and they mourn for you, and there's like a bit of an ending sequence where because you come here to the town because your father's friend invited you. So your father's friend has always been this guy who supports you. So at the end, I think he kind of like does a reflection and is like, oh, your father would be proud of you and things like that. But then after that, there's a heaven mode where you can play indefinitely. No one dies. I think the only difference is like things that have a sense of time passing, like your child, that they don't exist in the heaven mode. But
That's so sad. That's like, how do I read
awful.
into that? Like
there's like a lot of people on Reddit who I've seen, they're like traumatized from their characters dying in the original game. They're like, oh, I can't bring myself to play the remake because I can't go through that again. But it's it's a game called A Wonderful Life. It sounds really facetious and cute, but I guess ultimately the message is, life is wonderful. Carpe diem. Just live your best life until you die.
As much as I love like my farming sim, which is Stardew Valley, right? It's like I'm itching to get back into something like that, and I'm trying to find the next new thing. But if you talk about the games industry as a whole, it's like there's so many farming sims that pop up on it seems like a monthly basis at this point, right? And it's almost like a joke about indie directs or wholesome directs and things like that. But at the same time, it's like I'm just waiting for the one to captivate me again, like Stardew did, and I hope that this one can captivate other people as well, like more options for people.
Yeah, I mean, art, you can't understate how important the art style is, especially for games where you're like half of the mechanic is building relationships. If you don't like what you're seeing on screen, you're just not going to be motivated. Like I said, the ugly dudes just didn't do it for me. I'm so glad they all got plastic surgery done, I guess. If you're new to the franchise, it's a great one to pick up because of how easy they've made some of the mechanics, how likable the characters are, and fairly fast paced. Like I think you can grind the year up in a much shorter amount of time than previous titles. But if you don't like farming sim games, this is not the game to pick up. It's not going to change your mind. It's still very much a classic and doesn't have too much innovation. It's just sort of refined what the Harvest Moon Story Seasons franchise is known for. So don't expect, anything too crazy there. It's just really simple day on the life in the farm, which is kind of how I like it. Thanks for checking out our review of Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life. For more discussions around this lovable farming sim, check out the full episode of the podcast.